She learned the truth on a Tuesday morning. 6 months. That was all the doctor said before silence filled the room. Noira Belwin did not argue. She did not ask for numbers or options. She listened, nodded, and stood up with the calm of someone who understood that time had already made its decision. 6 months to live. She did not cry in the hallway. She did not cry in the elevator. She held herself together until she reached her car, closed the door, and rested her forehead against the steering wheel. Then her breath broke, not for herself, for 3 small lives waiting at home, 3 children who still reach for her face each morning, 3 voices that called her name without knowing fear, 3 hearts that trusted her without question. They did not know what 6 months meant. They only knew her. There was one man who did not know them at all. The world knew his name. Investors trusted his vision. Headlines praised his focus. He spoke often about legacy, about building something that would last beyond him. Yet the greatest part of his legacy had never looked into his eyes. A billionaire CEO, a global name, and 3 children he had never met. This is a story about time running out, about truth waiting too long, about love that arrives when silence no longer helps, and about a moment that changes everything. Have you ever given everything to someone only to realize they never truly saw what you were carrying? Have you ever stayed quiet because you believed waiting was kinder than speaking? Some people disappear loudly. Others fade while still standing in the room. Noira Belwin did everything the quiet way. She did not chase. She did not demand. She did not threaten a man with truth at the wrong moment. She believed love meant patience. She believed timing mattered. She believed presence would return when pressure eased. Many people believe the same thing. They tell themselves tomorrow will be better. Next week will feel safer. One more delay will not cost much, until time makes the decision for them. This story is for anyone who has ever felt invisible while holding everything together, for anyone who carried responsibility without applause, for anyone who waited for someone powerful to slow down and notice what truly mattered. Because silence does not pause life. Time does not negotiate, and when truth waits too long, it arrives with urgency instead of choice. Noira did not ask for recognition. She did not want sympathy. She wanted one thing: for a man who spoke about legacy to finally see the lives shaped by his absence. And time was no longer on her side. Time was no longer a distant idea. It had become a deadline. 6 months was not a warning. It was a countdown. Noira understood this in a way few people ever do. Every morning mattered. Every routine carried weight. Every quiet night after the children slept felt heavier than the one before. There was truth she had carried for years. Truth she had protected out of care. Truth she had delayed because the man tied to it lived under constant pressure and expectation. But pressure did not stop life from moving forward. While one man built an empire measured in valuations and headlines, 3 children learned how to walk, laugh, and speak without knowing his name. This was the conflict no success could erase. A mother running out of time. A father unaware of what he was losing. 3 children growing faster than regret. Truth does not wait for comfort. It does not adjust to schedules. It arrives when silence becomes dangerous. Noira faced a choice many people avoid. Keep protecting someone who never asked for the cost, or speak now, knowing the truth would change everything. She chose to speak, not out of anger, not out of need, out of responsibility, because time was no longer something she could offer. One message carried everything she had left to give. No explanations, no anger, no long history laid out in paragraphs, only truth, delivered with care. I am running out of time. There are 3 children you need to meet. Please. That was all. Noira did not follow up. She did not add urgency in capital letters. She did not send photos or reminders. She let truth stand on its own. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then the phone rang. On the other end was a man who had handled crises worth billions without hesitation. A man used to control, preparation, and certainty. This time, his voice held none of those things. He asked one question: where are you? What happens when a man who measures life and outcomes steps into a home measured in laughter and small shoes by the door? What happens when success meets responsibility face to face? What happens when a legacy builder realizes his greatest legacy already exists? In the days that followed, nothing moved the way he expected. Control slipped. Plans shifted. And 3 small voices began to change how he understood the word future. This is the moment where everything turns. Before this story continues, take a moment. If you believe love means showing up before time runs out, this story is for you. If you believe responsibility matters more than reputation, stay with us. And if you believe children deserve presents more than promises, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Stories like this are about more than emotion. They are about choices people make when no one is watching. They are about the quiet weight of waiting. They are about the courage it takes to face truth when delay is no longer an option. In the minutes ahead, you will witness a man step away from everything he built to face what he missed. You will see how 3 small lives challenge power in ways no boardroom ever could. And you will understand how one woman's final wish reshaped a future she would not live to see. This is not a story about wealth. It is a story about presence, about what happens when love is asked to show up without conditions, and about the kind of legacy that does not make headlines, yet changes lives forever. Stay with us. Noira Belwin had never been loud about survival. Even before motherhood reshaped her life, she moved through the world with calm focus. She solved problems without drawing attention to herself. She listened more than she spoke. People often mistook her silence for softness, yet those who worked closely with her understood something different. When pressure rose, she steadied the room. Strength, for Noira, was never about proving anything. After Rhett faded from her daily life, she did not collapse. She adjusted. She learned how to carry weight without announcing it. Bills were paid on time. Appointments were kept. Meals appeared when small voices asked for them. Her life became structured around care rather than longing. She never told herself she was brave. She told herself she was responsible. There were nights when fear arrived quietly, moments when exhaustion pressed against her chest. Yet even then, she refused to frame her life as a tragedy. She did not want her children growing inside a story shaped by resentment. Instead, she chose steadiness. She believed strength could exist without witnesses. That dignity did not require applause. That doing what needed to be done was its own form of courage. Noira did not wake each day asking for sympathy. She woke asking what the children needed first. That question guided everything. It shaped her choices, her patience, her ability to move forward without bitterness. She was not untouched by loss. She simply refused to let it define her. This was who she had always been. Even before time shortened, even before illness forced reflection, a woman who understood that survival did not have to announce itself to matter. Raising triplets alone was not something Noira had planned. It arrived without warning, without backup, without promises of ease. 2 boys and a girl entered her world early, small and fragile, demanding more energy than she believed she possessed. Yet she adapted. Her days became measured in feedings, naps, laundry cycles, and doctor visits. She learned how to lift 3 carriers without asking for help, how to calm 2 cries while holding the 3rd close, how to function on interrupted sleep without allowing frustration to shape her tone. There were no spectators during these moments. No one saw her pace the living room at night with a child pressed against her shoulder. No one counted how many times she woke before dawn. No one tracked how often she whispered reassurance to herself just to keep moving. She learned each child's rhythm. One boy liked to fall asleep with his hand curled near his cheek. The other needed movement, steady and patient. The girl watched everything, alert and curious, studying faces as though learning the world early. Noira adjusted her life around them completely. Her own needs shifted to the background without complaint. She ate when time allowed. Rest became something she collected in fragments, yet joy lived among the fatigue. Their laughter filled rooms that once held silence. Their presence replaced what had been missing. She did not resent doing it alone. She believed responsibility chosen in love carried purpose. Even on the hardest days, she reminded herself that these 3 lives trusted her completely. That trust mattered more than fairness. She was not waiting for rescue. She was building a home. Life settled into patterns that held both strain and warmth. Mornings started early. Breakfast was simple but consistent. Clothes were laid out the night before. Shoes lined the door. Noira turned routine into stability, knowing children thrived when the world felt predictable. There was exhaustion in every hour. Her body carried it constantly. Her thoughts moved slower some days. Yet joy arrived without warning. A shared laugh at the table. A new word spoken proudly. 3 sets of arms reaching for her at once. Those moments carried weight. They reminded her why she kept going without complaint. why she did not dwell on what might have been different. The children did not know what they lacked. They only knew what they had. Her evenings ended quietly. Toys gathered. Stories read. Lights dimmed. She lingered by their beds, listening to steady breathing, committing the sound to memory. It was during those still moments that reflection arrived. She thought about the life she once imagined, the version of love she believed would stay present. She allowed herself to acknowledge disappointment without letting it harden her. Joy did not erase fatigue, but it gave meaning to it. Noira understood that happiness did not arrive in grand gestures. It lived in ordinary care, repeated daily without recognition, and she learned to value those moments deeply. They became proof that love did not require perfection to thrive. Illness did not arrive with drama. It began quietly. Fatigue lingered longer. Pain stayed after rest. Appointments became more frequent. Answers came slower than questions. When the truth finally arrived, it forced reflection she had postponed. Time was no longer abstract. It became measurable. Noira did not spiral into panic. She assessed. She planned. She adjusted expectations. Fear visited her, but it did not control her. She asked herself difficult questions. What mattered most now? What would the children remember? What truth could no longer wait? She reviewed her life with honesty, not regret, not blame, just clarity. She realized she had lived with integrity. She had protected her children's peace. She had avoided bitterness. She had chosen dignity even when it went unnoticed. The illness did not create her strength. It revealed it, and it brought one truth to the surface she could no longer delay. Silence, once chosen to protect, now risked harm. Reflection turned into resolve. She would speak, not for herself, for the children. Noira never chased Rhett Calder for one simple reason. She did not believe love survived pressure through force. When the distance grew, she waited. When silence settled, she gave space, not because she lacked courage, but because she respected reality. He lived inside responsibility that consumed him. She did not want truth delivered as a burden. She believed timing mattered. By the time she understood that timing would never arrive on its own, life had already shifted. The children were born. Systems were built. She adjusted rather than pursue a man whose attention lived elsewhere. She did not want presence earned through guilt. She wanted choice. And when illness shortened the future, that belief did not change. She reached out not to reclaim the past, but to protect what remained. Dignity guided her decision. She did not speak sooner because she did not want to weaponize truth. She spoke now because silence would cost the children something they deserved. Love, to Noira, was not about chasing. It was about doing what was right, even when unseen. Rhett Calder did not inherit power. He built it. Long before his name appeared in financial headlines, he was a man who believed focus could replace luck. He learned early how fragile stability could be. His childhood taught him that security was something earned, not promised. That belief shaped everything that followed. He started with small ideas and long hours, shared office spaces, cheap meals eaten while reviewing spreadsheets, nights spent refining models most people would never notice. He was not flashy. He did not chase attention. He believed consistency mattered more than charm. People trusted him because he listened. That quality drew Noira to him in the early days. He paid attention without interrupting. He absorbed information fully before responding. When he spoke, his words carried intention rather than volume. As his company grew, responsibility multiplied faster than rest. Early success brought new expectations. Investors wanted certainty. Partners demanded reassurance. Every decision carried weight beyond numbers. He learned how to present confidence even when doubt pressed against him. Growth required discipline. He believed sacrifice was temporary, that once stability arrived, everything else would settle into place. Love included. Presence included. He told himself there would be time later. As the company expanded globally, Rhett adapted quickly. He learned how to manage teams across time zones, how to anticipate crises before they surfaced publicly, how to protect what he built through control. He became skilled at holding complexity without showing strain. Yet something shifted quietly. The further he rose, the narrower his focus became. He reduced life to outcomes. Results mattered. Delays felt dangerous. Emotional conversations were postponed because they felt inefficient. He did not stop caring. He started postponing. Rhett believed this was necessary, that the weight he carried justified distance, that love would understand if it waited. He did not see absence forming as a habit. He saw survival. Pressure did not announce itself loudly in Rhett's life. It settled in slowly, becoming constant. Every success increased expectations. Every public win came with private fear. One wrong decision could shake confidence. One misstep could invite scrutiny. Rhett learned to stay ahead of danger through control. Control over schedules, control over information, control over perception. He monitored everything carefully. He trusted data more than instinct. Numbers did not disappoint him. People sometimes did. As the company grew larger, so did his fear of collapse. He had seen promising ventures fall apart because leaders relaxed too early. He believed vigilance was love expressed toward what he built. This belief extended to how he managed his life. He kept emotions contained. He limited vulnerability. He postponed conversations that might distract him. He convinced himself this restraint protected everyone involved. At the center of his world was a sense of responsibility that felt endless. Employees depended on him. Investors watched him closely. Markets reacted to his words. He carried all of this silently. When pressure peaked, he withdrew further. Distance became his coping method. He believed stepping back emotionally gave him room to think clearly. That clarity would eventually benefit everyone. He did not recognize fear wearing the mask of discipline. The idea of slowing down unsettled him. Rest felt dangerous. Pauses invited doubt. He stayed busy to stay stable. In relationships, this translated into absence rather than conflict. He avoided difficult emotional moments by postponing them. He believed time would soften what needed to be said. Instead, time widened the gap. Rhett did not feel heartless. He felt overwhelmed. He did not feel indifferent. He felt responsible for too much to risk distraction. Yet beneath the control lived fear he rarely acknowledged. Fear that everything he built could disappear. Fear that slowing down would cost him momentum. Fear that choosing presence would weaken control. That fear shaped his silence more than intention ever did. Rhett's understanding of love was shaped by responsibility. He believed love meant providing stability, protection, opportunity. He equated care with ensuring survival. Emotional presence felt secondary to practical security. When he was with Noara, he admired her calm, her ability to solve problems without panic, her patience. He trusted her competence. He believed she understood his pressure. In the early days, love felt simple. Shared meals, late nights, easy trust. As responsibilities increased, Rhett assumed love would adjust alongside ambition. He did not see distance as abandonment. He saw it as temporary imbalance. He believed love endured pressure without requiring constant reassurance. When communication became strained, he did not confront it directly. He assumed patience would carry them through. He assumed silence was safer than uncertainty. When Noara hesitated to speak during moments of stress, he misread restraint as agreement. He believed she chose quiet because she understood. He did not consider what waiting cost her. His version of love relied heavily on assumption that presence could be postponed, that important conversations could wait for calmer days. That strength meant endurance without complaint. He did not recognize that love also needed acknowledgement. He cared deeply, yet failed to express it in ways that reached beyond intention. He believed his commitment to building something secure justified absence. In hindsight, his definition of love lacked balance, but at the time, it felt logical. Love to Rhett meant ensuring the future. He did not see that the present was slipping away. The message arrived without warning. Rhett was reviewing reports when his phone vibrated. Another notification among many. He nearly ignored it. Then he saw her name, Noara. He had not seen her name appear on his screen in years. His breath stalled before he opened the message. "I am running out of time. There are 3 children you need to meet. Please." Nothing else followed. No explanation, no accusation, no details. Just truth. Rhett stared at the screen longer than he intended. His thoughts raced, yet nothing formed clearly. 3 children. The words refused to settle into meaning. Shock arrived first, then disbelief, then a wave of understanding that struck deeper than fear. 3 children. His mind searched for error, for misunderstanding, for logic that would reduce the weight of what he read. None appeared. The message did not demand. It did not threaten. It did not seek leverage. It trusted him with truth, and that trust crushed him. He replayed years in seconds. Conversations delayed, silence accepted, distance rationalized. Guilt did not arrive as panic. It arrived as clarity. He understood immediately that no success could shield him from what he had missed. Control slipped. For the first time in years, Rhett did not know what to do next. After the message, noise faded. Meetings continued around him, yet his attention fractured. Voices blurred. Numbers lost meaning. The empire he managed daily felt distant. He left early. That night, Rhett sat alone without distractions. No screens, no reports, no schedules. Silence pressed against him. It forced reflection he'd avoided for years. He considered the cost of his choices, the moments he believed he could reclaim later, the conversations he delayed for convenience. He did not excuse himself. He understood something fundamental had been missing. Legacy, the word he often spoke publicly, took on a different shape. It no longer referred to influence or longevity. It referred to 3 lives he had never held. Shock gave way to resolve. He did not question whether he should go. He questioned why he had waited so long to understand what mattered. In that silence, Rhett recognized a truth he could no longer avoid. Success had given him power. Absence had taken something greater. And for the first time, the path forward was not defined by control. It was defined by responsibility. Rhett Calder did not arrive with certainty. The car slowed as it turned into a quiet neighborhood, far from glass buildings and guarded entrances. Streets felt narrower. Trees stood closer together. Houses carried the marks of real living rather than design intent. Nothing here reflected the world he controlled daily. He stepped out alone. No assistant followed. No calls came through. His phone remained silent in his pocket, ignored for the first time in years. He stood still for a moment, taking in the front of the house. It was modest, clean, cared for, a place shaped by routine rather than status. This was where his life had continued without him. Each step toward the door felt heavier than the last, not because he feared confrontation, but because he feared certainty. Whatever waited inside would not be abstract. It would not be delayed. It would look at him directly. The door opened before he knocked. Noira stood there. Time had changed her, yet recognition arrived instantly. She looked thinner. Her face held softness shaped by care rather than ease. Her eyes were steady, neither accusing nor welcoming with excess. She simply looked at him. Rhett struggled to speak. Words he had rehearsed dissolved. Apologies felt premature. Questions felt dangerous. "Come in," she said. Her voice carried calm without distance. He stepped inside. The house smelled of warm food and clean fabric. Shoes rested near the door. Small jackets hung low on hooks meant for children. Toys lined one corner of the living room, not staged, simply present. Life had been happening here. Rhett removed his jacket without thinking. His hands trembled slightly. He folded it carefully, as if order could steady him. Noira closed the door behind him. The sound landed final. This was no longer a concept, no longer a message on a screen. This was the place where time had moved forward without his permission, and he was finally inside it. Rhett noticed everything, not because he judged it, but because it was unfamiliar. The furniture bore signs of use. Cushions held their shape imperfectly. Surfaces carried fingerprints that had not been wiped away immediately. Nothing here existed to impress. His world thrived on polish. Clean lines, controlled environments, meetings designed to anticipate outcomes, spaces that erased unpredictability. This home embraced it. A stack of children's books leaned unevenly on a table. A crayon rested beneath a chair. A cup sat half-finished on the counter, forgotten in the middle of something more important. This place did not pause for presentation. Noira moved through the space with ease. She knew where everything lived. Her steps held confidence shaped by repetition. She did not rush to explain. She allowed him to observe. Rhett followed quietly. He realized how rarely he had stood inside a space shaped by care rather than ambition. His homes had been designed. This one had been lived in. The contrast unsettled him. He had measured success through growth and reach. Yet here, growth was measured in height charts marked along a wall. Reach was measured by how far small arms extended towards safety. Noara stopped near the hallway. "They're playing," she said. The word landed with weight. They, not an idea, not a possibility. Children. His children. He nodded, unable to trust his voice. He understood something deeply unsettling in that moment. Everything he had mastered offered no preparation here. Negotiation, leadership, strategy meant nothing inside this space. Presence was the only currency, and he had arrived with none earned yet. They appeared without ceremony. 3 small figures moved into view, drawn by curiosity rather than instruction. One girl with soft curls held a small object tightly. 2 boys stood close together, mirroring each other's stance. They looked at him openly. No fear, no expectation, just curiosity. Rhett forgot how to breathe. His mind searched for resemblance, a familiar expression, a shared feature, something to anchor himself. He saw it everywhere, in the girl's eyes, in the boys' steady focus, in the way they observed before reacting. His chest tightened. Noara spoke calmly. "These are your children." The room went still. Rhett lowered himself slowly, as if sudden movement might shatter something fragile. His knees touched the floor without thought. He wanted to be closer. He needed to be level with them. The children studied him. One of the boys stepped forward. He reached out and touched the sleeve of Rhett's shirt, testing texture, reality, presence. "Who you?" the child asked. The question cut through him. No title fit. No explanation prepared him. "I'm Rhett," he said quietly. The girl smiled. It was simple, unfiltered, accepting. That smile broke something open inside him. He did not cry. He could not look away. For the first time in years, nothing else existed. If this moment reached you, if it stirred something personal, pause here. Share what you felt in the comments. Some moments do not ask for silence. They ask for honesty. Overwhelm arrived in waves. Awe followed close behind. Fear settled last. Rhett stayed where he was, grounded by the weight of 3 small lives standing before him. They spoke among themselves, unbothered by the gravity he felt. They accepted his presence without question, without demand. That acceptance terrified him. Responsibility had arrived without warning, not gradually, not through planning. It stood in front of him, breathing, watching, trusting. He understood instantly that nothing in his life had prepared him for this. He had faced risk before. He had managed crises. He had carried pressure. None of it compared to this. Fear did not come from doubt about capability. It came from understanding permanence. These children were not a decision he could revise. They were not a challenge he could postpone. They existed, and they would remember. Noara watched him quietly. She did not rush the moment. She allowed him space to feel what arrived. Rhett looked up at her. She did not offer reassurance. She did not offer blame. Only truth. In that moment, Rhett grasped the full weight of responsibility arriving all at once. Not as punishment, not as reward, as reality. And reality did not wait for readiness. It simply asked for presence. If this moment touched you, you are not alone. If watching a man realize, all at once, what he almost missed made your chest tighten, share that feeling in the comments. Someone else reading your words needs to know they are seen. And if you believe presence matters more than titles, subscribe to this channel. These stories are for people who value responsibility, love, and showing up before time runs out. Stay with us. This story is only beginning to unfold. Rhett Calder did not announce his decision to stay. There was no speech, no declaration of change, no dramatic moment where he promised to become someone else. What happened instead was quieter and far more telling. He simply did not leave. The first morning after meeting the children, he woke before dawn out of habit. Years of schedules had trained his body to move early. He stood in the small guest room, fully dressed, listening to the sounds of the house waking slowly. A child's soft call, footsteps padding across the floor, the low hum of life beginning. In his other homes, mornings began with screens and updates. Here, they began with voices. Rhett paused. For the first time in years, there was nothing demanding his immediate response. No urgent call, no assistant waiting. The world outside this house could wait. He walked into the kitchen quietly. Noara was already there, preparing breakfast with practiced ease. She looked up briefly, acknowledging his presence without comment. No expectation followed. No test. She allowed him to exist in the space without pressure. The children entered soon after. One clung to her leg. Another climbed onto a chair with determination. The girl watched Rhett carefully, measuring him with open curiosity. He stayed where he was. He did not reach out too fast. He did not force connection. He waited. That waiting was his first real act of presence. Throughout the day, Rhett followed rather than led. He observed routines. He learned where cups were kept. He noticed how Noira spoke to each child differently, adjusting tone and pace with instinct shaped by time. He did not interrupt. He absorbed. In the afternoon, his phone vibrated in his pocket. A reminder, a scheduled meeting he had forgotten to cancel. He silenced it, not out of rebellion, out of choice. Staying did not feel heroic. It felt unfamiliar. Yet within that unfamiliarity, something softened. He realized how often he had mistaken motion for importance. Presence asked for something different. It asked him to slow down. And for the first time in years, Rhett Calder allowed himself to do exactly that. By the second day, the outside world began to press in. Emails stacked up. Notifications multiplied. His absence was noticed quickly. Meetings awaited his voice. Decisions paused in his silence. Rhett sat at the small kitchen table with his phone face down. He thought about the version of himself who would normally respond without hesitation. The man who believed every delay risked collapse. The leader who equated constant availability with responsibility. Then he looked up. One of the boys was building something on the floor with careful focus. The other hovered close, offering pieces with solemn dedication. The girl sat nearby, narrating the process with quiet authority. This was also responsibility. Rhett opened his phone. He did not write explanations. He canceled. One meeting became two. Two became several. Launch timelines shifted. Board members expressed concern. He acknowledged it without urgency. For the first time, he did not feel panic. What surprised him most was not resistance from others, but relief within himself. Stepping back did not cause immediate failure. The world did not collapse because he chose stillness for a few days. He realized how much of his pressure had been internal. That afternoon, he took a call from a senior executive. He spoke briefly, clearly. He delegated without apology. He trusted others to hold weight he had carried alone for too long. After the call ended, he returned to the floor. One of the boys looked up and handed him a piece. Rhett accepted it. No achievement in his career had ever felt like that small, quiet invitation. Later, Noira watched him from across the room. She did not comment on his cancellations. She did not praise his presence. She allowed his actions to speak. That restraint mattered. Rhett understood then that choosing presence was not a single decision. It was a series of small refusals to let urgency steal what mattered. Love, he was learning, did not grow through grand gestures. It grew through attention given consistently, without distraction. Rhett approached routines the only way he knew how at first. Carefully, methodically, with the instinct to optimize. It did not work. The children did not respond to efficiency. They responded to tone, patience, and repetition. Their days followed rhythms shaped by need rather than logic. He learned quickly that control did not belong here. Meals happened when hunger appeared, not on schedule. Naps required flexibility. Mornings unfolded at different speeds depending on mood. Rhett struggled with this more than he expected. Yet instead of imposing order, he observed. He asked Noira questions. He listened to her answers fully. He accepted correction without defensiveness. She showed him where extra clothes were kept, how to recognize signs of fatigue, how to redirect attention gently rather than force compliance. He practiced. Sometimes he failed. When one child resisted bedtime, Rhett hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Noira stepped in calmly, demonstrating patience without frustration. He watched, then tried again the next night. Gradually, routines began to include him naturally. He learned which child preferred stories read slowly, which needed reassurance before sleep, which found comfort in silence. These details mattered. They required attention rather than authority. Each successful moment built confidence not rooted in control, but connection. Rhett felt himself change subtly. He stopped thinking ahead constantly. He focused on what was happening now. Learning routines humbled him. He understood then how much Noira had carried alone, how much effort lived inside moments others might overlook. Respect replaced assumption, and with that respect came deeper presence. The bond did not form suddenly. There was no instant closeness, no dramatic turning point where the children declared acceptance. Instead, connection grew quietly, shaped by repetition and trust. The children began to seek Rhett out without thinking about it. One brought him a toy during play. Another sat beside him during story time without instruction. The girl began asking questions, simple and direct, curious about his voice and attention. Rhett answered honestly. He did not exaggerate. He did not perform. He allowed himself to be seen without polish. That authenticity mattered more than charm. During walks around the neighborhood, the children began to include him naturally. Small hands reached for his. Steps adjusted to his pace. They spoke to him as they would to anyone present and kind. Noira noticed the shift. She saw how Rhett followed their lead, how he allowed them to guide interaction rather than directing it. She saw his patience when energy ran high, his calm when emotions fluctuated. Bonding happened in the in-between moments. Shared laughter over spilled juice. Quiet company during naps. Simple exchanges that required nothing beyond presence. Rhett felt something unfamiliar settle within him. Peace, not the absence of responsibility, but the fulfillment of it. He no longer questioned whether he belonged there. The children answered that for him without words. Acceptance arrived without ceremony. One morning, as Rhett prepared to leave the room briefly, one of the boys asked, "You come back?" The question was simple. It carried everything. "Yes," Rhett said without hesitation. "I'll be right back." The child nodded, satisfied. That trust anchored him. From that day forward, the children no longer observed him as someone new. They included him instinctively. They assumed his presence would remain. That assumption carried weight Rhett felt deeply. He understood then that attention given consistently becomes safety. That staying, repeated without exception, builds belief. Noira watched this transformation with quiet relief. She did not intervene. She allowed space for acceptance to settle naturally. Rhett no longer reached for his phone first. He reached for connection. He noticed how often the children sought his attention not because they needed something, but because they wanted to share. Love grew where attention stayed. The moral became clear without explanation. Presence creates belonging. Belonging creates trust. Trust creates family. Rhett Calder did not change through promises. He changed by staying. The conversation did not begin when they planned it. It began late one evening, after the children had fallen asleep and the house had settled into stillness. The kind of stillness that arrives only when nothing is being demanded. Rhett sat at the small kitchen table, reviewing nothing, thinking about everything. Noira moved quietly around the space, wiping down surfaces more out of habit than necessity. They had spoken before, about schedules, about meals, about the children's needs. This was different. Noira poured 2 cups of tea and placed one in front of him. She sat across from him without ceremony. No distance, no tension, just presence. "We should talk," she said. Rhett nodded. He had rehearsed words in his mind for days, yet none felt right. Apologies felt too small. Explanations felt defensive. Silence felt dishonest. So, he waited. Noira spoke first. "I don't want this to be about blame," she said. "That won't help us." Her voice carried calm shaped by reflection, not restraint. "I want us to be honest." Rhett leaned forward slightly, listening. She spoke about the early days, not with nostalgia, with clarity. She described who they were before ambition began to shape distance. She acknowledged the care they shared, the trust that felt easy then. She did not romanticize it. She then spoke about waiting, how she believed patience was the kindest choice, how she delayed truth because she wanted him to hear it without pressure, how she mistook silence for protection. Rhett absorbed every word without interruption. When she finished, she paused. "I don't regret raising them alone," she said. "I regret believing silence would solve anything." The words landed softly but firmly. Rhett responded slowly. "I thought I was protecting everything," he said. "I didn't realize what I was losing." Noira nodded. They sat with that truth together. This was not a confrontation. It was an acknowledgement that both had made choices shaped by fear and belief. Neither raised their voice. Neither defended themselves. For the first time, they spoke as 2 adults facing reality rather than memory. Peace did not come from agreement. It came from honesty finally given space. Rhett did not excuse himself. That mattered. He spoke about the pressure he carried, but he did not present it as justification. He explained how fear shaped his decisions, how control became his comfort, how postponing emotional conversations felt safer than facing uncertainty. "I believed I would fix everything later," he said. "I didn't understand that later was costing something real." Noira listened without interruption. She did not nod in approval. She did not soften his words. She allowed accountability to stand on its own. When he finished, she spoke clearly. "You weren't cruel," she said, "but you were absent, and absence still shapes outcomes." Rhett accepted that without argument. He admitted he had assumed strength meant endurance without expression, that love could survive distance indefinitely, that presence could be reclaimed. He understood now how flawed those assumptions were. Noira acknowledged her own choices. "I should have spoken sooner," she said. "I chose silence because it felt safe. That was my mistake." There was no self-blame in her voice, only ownership. They recognized how both had avoided discomfort, believing avoidance would protect what mattered. Instead, it allowed distance to grow. Accountability did not require punishment. It required truth spoken without cruelty. Rhett asked questions, not to challenge, but to understand. How she felt during the early months of pregnancy, how she coped after the children were born, how she managed fear without support. Noira answered honestly. She described exhaustion, loneliness, resolve, joy woven through struggle. She did not accuse. She did not exaggerate. Her strength unsettled him more than anger ever could. He apologized then, not dramatically, not repeatedly. Once, "I'm sorry I wasn't there when it mattered most," he said. Noira accepted it without ceremony. That acceptance was not forgiveness of consequence. It was recognition of effort now. Accountability settled into the space between them without weight. They spoke next about what could not be changed. This was the hardest part. Rhett asked if there had ever been moments she considered reaching out differently. Noira admitted she had. She spoke about drafts of messages never sent, conversations rehearsed and abandoned. But every time, she said, I asked myself whether I wanted truth heard or reaction triggered. She chose restraint. Rhett acknowledged that restraint had protected him from immediate discomfort, but it had also protected him from growth. They spoke about missed milestones, first steps, first words, long nights he would never remember. Rhett did not ask for details he could not bear. He accepted that absence had shape and weight. Noira did not shield him from that truth. She also did not use it to wound him. Acceptance arrived when they stopped wishing for a different past and focused on understanding the one they lived. They agreed on something important. Neither of them were villains. Neither of them were heroes. They were two people shaped by belief, fear, and timing. That realization softened what remained between them. They spoke about what they had learned, about how silence can feel noble but carry cost, about how ambition narrows vision when unchecked, about how love needs acknowledgement as much as intention. The past did not vanish. It stopped controlling the present. Peace without denial began there. The romance between them did not return suddenly. It surfaced gently. Late one evening, as they finished talking, Noira reached across the table and rested her hand near Rhett's, not seeking reassurance, simply acknowledging closeness. He did not rush to take it. He waited. When he did, it was careful. They shared silence that felt different than before. Not avoidance, not distance, just understanding. Rhett spoke quietly. I don't want to promise what I can't live up to, he said. I want to earn trust where it exists now. Noira appreciated that restraint. I don't need grand gestures, she said. I need consistency. Their connection now rested on realism, not longing, not fantasy, acceptance of who they were now. They shared memories without rewriting them. They acknowledged affection without expectation. That night, they did not define what they were becoming. They allowed space for growth without pressure. Romance lived there, in respect, in patience, in presence that asked nothing beyond honesty. Love matured, not louder, not urgent, grounded. Preparation began quietly. Noira did not frame it as an ending. She framed it as care. Papers appeared on the kitchen table one afternoon after the children had gone down for naps. Folders were labeled clearly. Nothing about the process felt rushed, yet everything carried urgency. She had already done much of the work. guardianship documents, trust arrangements, medical directives. She had thought through scenarios she never wanted to imagine. Each decision had been weighed not by comfort, but by stability. Rhett sat beside her, reading carefully. This was a world he understood. Contracts, planning, outcomes, yet this felt different. Every signature touched lives he now knew personally. They spoke through details together, not as former lovers, not as strangers. As parents facing reality, Noira asked direct questions. Would he be present consistently? Would his work adapt to their needs? Would he protect the children's sense of home rather than moving them through his world? Rhett answered without deflection. He agreed to structure his life around them, not temporarily, permanently. Legal steps became moral commitments. Documents reflected intention, but intention mattered more than ink. Rhett insisted on safeguards that went beyond obligation. He wanted systems in place that protected the children even if he failed himself. That insistence surprised Noira. It eased something inside her. This was not about money. Wealth already existed. This was about certainty, about ensuring the children would never feel like an afterthought again. Responsibility, she believed, was love expressed early. Rhett was finally learning that less. Legal planning addressed structure. Emotional preparation addressed fear. Noira began speaking to the children differently, not with sadness, with intention. She told stories about love, safety, and continuity. She spoke about how care does not disappear when routines change. She was careful with language. Children did not need explanations shaped by finality. They needed reassurance shaped by consistency. Rhett watched closely. He noticed how Noira repeated certain phrases, how she emphasized trust, how she reinforced the idea that people who love you stay connected, even when roles shift. He learned from her. At night, when the house grew quiet, Rhett and Noira talked about fears that documents could not address, how grief might surface unexpectedly, how children might ask questions neither of them could answer cleanly. Noira admitted what frightened her most: not leaving, being forgotten too quickly. She feared her presence would fade from their daily language, that small habits she shaped would dissolve without explanation. Rhett listened without interruption. He promised nothing dramatic. He promised memory. He told her he would speak her name often, that he would preserve routines she built, that her influence would remain visible, not hidden. Noira did not cry. She nodded. That promise mattered. Emotional preparation was not about easing pain. It was about honoring truth while reinforcing safety. Love lived there, alongside grief. One evening, Noira finally allowed herself to speak freely. They sat near the window, light fading slowly. She did not soften her words. "I'm afraid of the moment they reach for me," she said, "and I'm not there." Rhett felt the weight of that sentence settle fully. She spoke about missing milestones, about birthdays she would not see, about questions the children would ask later when understanding deepened. She feared Rhett might one day resent the responsibility, that the demands of his world might tempt distance again. She needed to say it. Rhett did not interrupt. He acknowledged her fear without defensiveness. "I can't promise perfection," he said. "I can promise presence." He explained how his priorities had shifted, how the children now anchored decisions automatically, how absence felt unacceptable in a way it never had before. He asked her what she needed to feel peace. Noira answered clearly. "Consistency," she said, "and honesty." He agreed to both. If this part of the story speaks to you, pause here. Think about what responsibility looks like in your own life. Who depends on your presence? Who needs reassurance before time presses closer? If this reflection matters to you, share your thoughts in the comments. And if stories about showing up resonate with you, stay connected to this channel. Rhett's promises were not poetic. They were practical. He promised to remain nearby, to keep the children in the home they knew, to maintain routines rather than replace them with convenience. He promised to ask for help when overwhelmed, to avoid disappearing behind responsibility again. Most importantly, he promised Noira that the children would never question whether they were chosen. "I will choose them every day," he said. Before work, before reputation, before everything, Noira believed him. Not because of words, because of pattern. He had already begun living that promise, canceling when needed, adjusting without resentment. Staying even when leaving would have been easier. Love and grief existed side by side now. Preparation did not remove pain. It gave it meaning. Noira rested easier knowing responsibility had arrived before urgency demanded it, that the children would not experience sudden change layered on loss. Responsibility, she understood, was love spoken in advance, and Rhett, finally, had learned how to speak it. Take a moment here. Think about the people who rely on your presence, not your promises, not your intentions, your presence. Responsibility does not wait for perfect timing. Love does not arrive late and still expect the same place. If this part of the story made you reflect on how you show up for others, share your thoughts in the comments. Someone reading them needs that reminder today. And if stories about love, accountability, and showing up before time runs out matter to you, subscribe to this channel. Stay with us. What comes next carries the weight of everything built so far. The final days did not arrive suddenly. They narrowed. Noira felt it first in her body. Energy faded faster. Rest no longer restored what it once did. Mornings required intention rather than momentum. Yet she did not announce this change. She adapted quietly, the way she always had. Rhett noticed. He began structuring days around her strength rather than routine. Activity shortened. Walks slowed. Conversations stretched gently without urgency. He learned to read the small signs. When her voice softened, when pauses lengthened, when silence meant fatigue, not distance, the house adjusted without discussion. The children sensed something shifting but could not name it. They responded instinctively. They stayed closer. They asked fewer questions. They leaned into routine with deeper trust. Noira watched them carefully. She did not want her final days shaped by fear. She wanted them shaped by familiarity, by laughter where possible, by calm where needed. She spent time with each child individually, not in dramatic moments, but in ordinary ones, sitting beside them during play, listening to their stories unfold without correction, watching their faces as they focused on small tasks that felt enormous to them. Rhett stayed nearby, attentive without hovering. At night, when the house settled, Noira rested more. Rhett remained close, sometimes reading quietly, sometimes simply listening to her breathing. He learned how much comfort lived in shared stillness. Time no longer felt abstract. It felt precious. Noira did not speak often about the end. She did not frame it as departure. She framed it as transition. Her calm steadied Rhett more than reassurance ever could. Love filled the space where fear might have grown. The days narrowed, but meaning deepened. The children did not understand what was coming. They understood change, but not finality. They knew their mother rested more, that her voice tired sooner, that Rhett stayed closer than ever. They adjusted without resistance, guided by instinct rather than explanation. Their innocence shaped the atmosphere. They laughed freely. They argued over toys. They demanded attention without awareness of time pressing close. Their world remained immediate and honest. Noira cherished that. She did not want their memories marked by sorrow. She wanted them marked by safety. She played when she could. She listened always. When strength allowed, she joined them on the floor, moving slowly, content to observe rather than lead. When energy faded, she rested nearby, her presence still anchoring them. Rhett watched these moments carefully. He learned how innocence carried wisdom. The children did not ask why things were changing. They accepted care as it came. They trusted love without questioning duration. One afternoon, the girl climbed onto Noira's lap and rested her head against her chest. Noira held her gently, eyes closed, absorbing the weight and warmth. Rhett stood nearby, uncertain whether to intervene. Noira looked up at him and smiled. "Let her stay," she said quietly. That moment anchored him. He understood then that protection did not always mean explanation. Sometimes it meant preserving peace. The children fell asleep easily those days, comforted by closeness rather than routine alone. Rhett learned to read stories softly, to sit until breathing steadied, to leave only when reassurance settled fully. Innocence did not ignore reality. It softened it, and Noira allowed it to do so, trusting that kindness lived strongest in moments unburdened by fear. Noira chose her words carefully. She did not gather everyone for a speech. She did not mark the moment. She waited until Rhett sat beside her one evening, the house quiet, the children asleep. "I need to tell you something," she said. Rhett listened without interruption. She spoke about kindness, not as a trait, but as a practice. She reminded him that strength often showed itself in patience rather than control, that listening mattered more than correcting. Teach them how to treat people, she said. Not by instruction, by example. She spoke about courage, about choosing honesty even when it felt uncomfortable, about admitting uncertainty without shame. Let them see you learning, she said. That will teach them more than certainty ever could. She spoke about love, not as sacrifice alone, but as presence, as attention given fully without distraction. They don't need perfection, she said. They need to know they matter. Rhett absorbed every word. She did not ask him to replace her. She did not ask him to become something else. She asked him to remain himself, grounded by responsibility and guided by care. Her advice carried no regret. It carried trust. When she finished, Rhett nodded. I will, he said. She did not ask how. She trusted that he understood. Her final advice was not complicated. It was human. Kindness outlives time. Rhett did not respond with words. His resolve took shape in action. He rearranged commitments again. Permanently. He communicated changes without apology. He anchored his future around the children's needs without hesitation. He spent nights preparing himself emotionally rather than logistically. He learned how to sit with grief without rushing it away, how to remain steady even when fear pressed close. He practiced presence deliberately. He held the children longer. He listened more carefully. He memorized their routines not as tasks, but as expressions of care. He also allowed himself to grieve early, not publicly, privately. He accepted that loss would shape him, that pretending otherwise would only delay healing. He resolved to carry memory openly, not quietly. Noara saw this shift. It comforted her. She rested easier knowing resolve had replaced uncertainty. That responsibility had arrived fully, not reluctantly. Rhett understood now that promises made late still mattered, but promises lived early mattered more. His resolve did not seek recognition. It sought continuity. The final moments arrived gently. Noara rested comfortably, surrounded by familiar sounds. The house felt calm. Light filtered softly through the windows. Nothing felt rushed. Rhett held her hand. The children visited briefly, guided by instinct rather than instruction. They spoke softly. They touched her face. They rested close. Noara smiled at them. She did not explain. She let love speak instead. When the children were guided to another room, Rhett remained. He spoke to her quietly, thanking her without needing response. He told her she was seen, that her strength would remain present in every choice he made. Noara listened. Her breathing slowed. Her grip softened. There was no struggle, no fear, only release. Rhett stayed still, honoring the moment without interruption. Love did not disappear. It changed form. After she was gone, the house held silence. Not emptiness. Presence lingered. Rhett did not rush the children through grief. He allowed questions to arise naturally. He answered honestly without burdening them with weight they could not carry. He spoke Noara's name often. He preserved her routines, her influence, her voice through memory. The children adapted slowly, supported by consistency. They spoke of her freely. They asked about her with curiosity rather than fear. Rhett honored that. He understood now that kindness outlived time because it shaped how people remembered being treated. Noara's kindness lived in the children's trust, in their confidence, in their ability to love without hesitation. Her final wish had not been dramatic. It had been fulfilled. And life, though changed, continued. Grounded in care, life did not pause after Noara was gone. It shifted. The days that followed moved slowly at first, shaped by unfamiliar quiet. Morning light still entered the house at the same angle. The kitchen still smelled of familiar food. Toys still rested where small hands left them, yet everything carried a new weight. Rhett did not rush change. He believed sudden movement would fracture what little stability remained. Instead, he let days unfold gently. He followed the routines Noara had built so carefully. Breakfast at the same time, stories read in the same places, bedtime songs sung softly, even when his voice tightened. The children adjusted in ways only children can. They asked questions without fear. They spoke of their mother freely. They referenced her presence naturally, as though she still occupied space just beyond sight. Rhett never corrected them. He allowed memory to live without constraint. Grief arrived unevenly. Some mornings felt manageable. Others pressed heavy against his chest. Rhett learned to accept both without resistance. He did not hide emotion from the children, nor did he overwhelm them with it. He modeled honesty. "I miss her too," he would say. That truth anchored them. Life, after her passing, did not erase joy. It redefined it. Laughter returned gradually, shaped by comfort rather than relief. The children continued growing, curious and trusting, guided by consistency more than explanation. Rhett understood something deeply in those early weeks. Grief did not demand stillness. It demanded care, and care, when offered consistently, became a bridge between loss and continuity. Noira's influence remained everywhere, in the way the children spoke, in the habits she shaped, in the calm she had cultivated even while preparing to leave. Life continued, not untouched, but grounded. Rhett did not approach parenthood as a role he inherited. He approached it as a responsibility he chose. Each morning, he woke before the children, preparing quietly. He learned to anticipate needs without rushing. He accepted that patience mattered more than efficiency. He adjusted his expectations daily. Parenthood demanded presence without condition. He attended appointments personally. He learned how to listen to concerns without dismissing them. He became familiar with small details others might overlook. Favorite foods, comfort objects, signals of fatigue. These details mattered. They formed trust. The children began to rely on him instinctively. They sought his attention not because they lacked something, but because they felt secure sharing. That security did not come from authority. It came from consistency. Rhett understood now that leadership within a family differed entirely from leadership in business. Control had little value here. Guidance mattered more. He learned to apologize when wrong, to ask questions instead of assuming, to sit through discomfort rather than escape it. There were difficult moments, times when exhaustion pressed close, when fear of failure surfaced unexpectedly, when responsibility felt overwhelming. In those moments, Rhett remembered Noira's words. Teach by example. He remained. Raising the children reshaped his understanding of success. Progress was measured in trust rather than achievement. Growth appeared in confidence rather than milestones alone. He did not seek validation. He sought presence. And in that presence, he found something he had never expected, a fulfillment. Outside the home, the world continued to speak in familiar language. Headlines praised Rhett Calder's leadership. Analysts cited his influence. Conferences requested his presence. His company thrived steadily under restructured leadership. Publicly, he was still defined by wealth and vision. Privately, that definition no longer satisfied him. Rhett returned to public life selectively. He spoke when needed. He declined when unnecessary. He no longer allowed external pressure to dictate personal absence. People noticed. Some questioned his reduced visibility. Others admired his restraint. Rumors surfaced, as they always did, attempting to explain his change. Rhett did not correct them. He understood something fundamental. Success defined by others would always remain incomplete. What mattered now lived beyond recognition. When interviews asked about legacy, his answers shifted subtly. He spoke about responsibility, about values, about presence. He did not mention details. He did not need to. Those who listened closely understood. The world continued to measure success in power and reach. Rhett allowed it to do so without resistance. He had learned that true fulfillment did not require agreement. It required alignment. His alignment lived at home, shaped by care rather than applause, and that shift marked the most significant success of his life. Rhett often reflected on what had changed him most. It was not loss alone. It was timing. Meeting his children when time no longer promised extension stripped illusion away. He could no longer delay presence. He could no longer believe availability would arrive later. Truth arrived when excuses no longer helped. That clarity transformed him. He no longer equated love with provision alone. He understood that presence created security far deeper than resources ever could. He learned that fear often disguised itself as responsibility. That ambition could quietly narrow compassion. That silence chosen for comfort carried consequence. Most importantly, he learned that change did not require punishment to occur. It required honesty. Noira's strength, even in her final days, taught him this lesson. She did not demand remorse. She did not seek correction. She trusted him with responsibility. That trust reshaped him. He became a man guided by awareness rather than fear, by patience rather than urgency, by connection rather than control. Change settled permanently, not because of loss, because of understanding. As years passed, the children grew. They asked questions about their mother with curiosity rather than sorrow. Rhett answered honestly, framing her presence as enduring rather than absent. He spoke of her often. He honored her influence openly. The children learned kindness not through instruction but through observation. They watched how Rhett treated others, how he listened, how he stayed. They carried her legacy forward without knowing it. Rhett understood then the truth Noira had lived by. Presence outlasts power. Influence fades. Recognition shifts. Authority transfers. Presence remains. Love, given honestly, never fades. It lives in memory, in behavior, in how people learn to treat one another. Rhett no longer chased permanence through achievement. He cultivated it through care, and that care shaped lives far beyond his own. This story is not about wealth. It is about timing. It is about what happens when love is delayed until urgency demands action, and what becomes possible when presence finally arrives. If this story moved you, reflect on where your attention lives today. Who relies on your presence? Who needs reassurance before time presses closer? Love does not wait for perfect conditions. Responsibility does not arrive politely. And presence, once given honestly, never loses value. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. Share what resonated. Someone reading your words needs that reminder. And if you believe stories about love, accountability, and showing up matter, subscribe to this channel. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs it today. Stay with us. More stories like this are waiting.